Hello. This video will be about the starting point and the importance of the starting point. I am doing this vlog because I have recently noticed again and also noticed in the past the importance of my starting point in whatever I do or express. It's no coincidence that it's the word importance within the combination of the starting point, because who I am within and as my starting point I will import and carry through within everything I do. That's basically how who I am determines what I will create. And the interesting thing I see is that, for example, I'm doing something from a starting point of something separate from me, of any reason or point in separation of myself. For example, to gain a certain status or to impress another being or person, my starting point will always be separate from me. And when, let's say, I'm walking with the starting point, doing the things I want to or I decided to do within the starting point, I will reach, for example, the end of walking this point where I have then manifested or pulled something through into creation, and now I'm basically on the end point of the sequence. I will be stuck, so to speak, in a form of limitation, because I will have reached my end point, which is my starting point, which is a certain point or reason or thing in separation of myself, separate from me here, which in my example was to impress a certain person or to achieve a certain image of myself, so I can even try to impress myself. And if I have then reached this point, I will be stuck. This will be my limitation. My starting point will be my limitation. So it's about who and what I am and accept and allow as my starting point, which is basically about basically, in essence, there are only two starting points, which is my starting point self-interest, or is my starting point something that is best for all life, which will be unlimited, which will not be limited to a certain outcome, which will not be limited by a self-interested starting point and so end point, but it's an opportunity, or gives the opportunity for unlimited potential, for development, for growth, for expansion within, for example, a certain point, but can also be seen or expanded to everything one does or undertakes. So another point, or how to make it practical or explain this practically, is, for example, to look at if one is learning a certain skill to with a fixed starting point and so end point, what one will learn the skill to do something and not learn the skill for oneself, and so really get into learning the skill, but learning it with a certain defined and limited scope and view. And so one will, for example, connect the skill to a certain outcome and not realize or see or understand how one, for example, could use the same skill in a completely other context, or also maybe not develop the skill in its full potential, in one's full potential and capacity to express it, to learn it, which means that actually it's not best for oneself to have a limited, a self-interested starting point, but it's best for oneself also to have a starting point that is best for all, and to always consider and make sure that one starting point is aligned with what is best for all life, which is the point of self-honesty, because one will not always, most of the time, not be self-honest with oneself, especially about one's starting point, because in one's mind exist all kind of agendas, all kind of goals, all kind of self-definitions, that all kind of, for example, desires of pre-programmed points one had gathered throughout one's life, and that are starting points for movement, basically, that one had energized throughout one's life and living, and that are there in a way pushing as the mind, and oneself is pushing as those points to be manifested, to be created. So another perspective of the same point is to look at it when one walks from desire for manifesting a point. When this point is manifested, then as the starting point and the end point, one will be still here. The point will be gone, walked through, and another point, for example, in the mind would be waiting. So one would forever basically be stuck in this trying to manifest, live out, and manifest points within one's own mind to bring them into creation, just to every time realize again and again that, oops, that's not what it's really about, that's empty, basically. The bubble pops and one stands at the same point, here with oneself. So this point or this process can be short-circuited in many ways through making sure that one is always walking from a starting point that is not of the mind, that is of principle of oneness and equality, of what is best for all life. And I said this is a point of being self-honest with oneself. So it's also not the end of the world if one notices that one is walking or has been walking from a point of self-interest. It happens most of the time, but one can simply take a self-intimate look, forgive oneself, and realign one's starting point, and then walk from a realigned starting point. Yes, so was there anything that I wanted to share further? Yeah, also about how the opportunity to look, realign, and assess our starting point is here in every moment. It's actually every moment is a moment one can realign one's starting point, and actually one has to do it in every moment to make sure that one's starting point in every moment, in every situation, is what is best for all life, for oneself and everything and everyone else. So, this was my video for today. I wish everyone an enjoyable weekend and say goodbye.